As The Boys approaches the end of, let's say, phase 1, because while the main show is ending with the upcoming season 5, they're going full steam ahead on spin-offs, and who knows if there'll be a Gen V season 3. But as we reach this, still crucial point in the universe with the main show coming to an end, I have two major concerns that have developed, and I'm curious if maybe you've noticed them as well. The first is that this show has become extremely political. I mean, it's always been political to a point and has always offered real-world commentary. But first and foremost, it was, at least at the beginning, the main objective was to be a commentary on superhero stories. So effectively that it kind of undercut Marvel and DC, because this show, not owned by a major studio, or, it doesn't have the burden of having to sell a lot of toys to kids and families and stuff, has, been able to go further, along with Invincible from the same producer, Seth Rogen, than those other properties. And I think that's when it's at its strongest. But, Homelander maybe became a bit too popular with far-right groups. So I think the show wanted to push in the other direction aggressively. Boy, did they. And, also in the original comic book, Homelander does go to the White House, right? So with those things in mind, season 4 became a lot more politically focused. Kind of like how, the Colbert Report became the Late Show with Stephen Colbert. And I think that the former still had very strong, biting, and effective commentary, but because it was a little bit more subtle in in the way it was delivering it, and was, I think, first and foremost a comedy show, it cast a wider net. Everybody watched that show. It's one of the reasons that he got the Late Show. But Colbert, I think, made that decision partially because of the fracturing of audiences that we're seeing everywhere. Different discussion. But anyway, Gen V season 2 is as political as The Boys season 4. And it's a choice to continue in that direction. Now, why not? Because The Boys season 4 did incredibly well in the ratings. Better than Marvel and DC shows have been doing. And, Gen V season 1, it did okay in the ratings. It was no The Boys, but I think it placed on Nielsen a couple of times. And I think that that's probably going to be what happens with season 2. It doesn't have the same audience as the main show. And that leads me to my second concern. And I think you can see where I'm going with this, because we've all seen what's happened to Marvel with Disney Plus, those characters. I mean, Gen V season 2 makes it pretty freaking clear that Marie Moreau is on a collision course with Homelander. If she's not, that's going to undercut the entire show, because that seems to be everything that it's about, particularly in season 2. But when the Gen V characters do jump to The Boys season 5, and again, how can they not after what happens in season 2, how will that be for the fans of the main show who don't watch this spin-off show, right? Again, it reminds me of what's going on with Marvel and their Disney Plus shows when they try to bring them and, those characters into the main stories. And then also, even at DC, James Gunn, after Superman, has been saying that Peacemaker is the next chapter, but yet at least so far, nobody's watching Peacemaker season 2. I mean, it really hasn't helped at all. We'll see if it has that explosive ending that Gunn has promised. And, this season has an explosive ending that's also crucial to the future of The Boys. But I don't know if anyone's going to watch it. Are you planning to watch Gen V season 2? Did you watch Gen V season 1? And if not, how did that affect the way you view The Boys? But I mean, what do you think about my two concerns? And do you share them about The Boys right now? Of course, last season, there was that soup virus that they introduced, which, to Eric Kripke's credit, and he's the Kevin Feige of The Boys universe, it did show up in The Boys season 4 in a major way. But this cuts both ways. Like, I think it was smart to make it that you never had to watch a single episode of Gen V season 1 to feel caught up with the virus storyline. But then also, if you didn't need to watch why make a show you don't need to watch? I mean, that was like Marvel's mantra too. They're like, you don't need to watch the shows to watch the movies. And everyone was like, okay. And then they mess that up by saying, oh, well, here's this character. And you're like, but you told me I didn't have to watch that. So it's really, really tricky. Cinematic, I think that Marvel's original formula of, a spine of films and then trilogies that spun off of that all in the movie space is the way to do it. I think, Hollywood's having a hard time doing movies and shows within a franchise and not, diluting the audience too much. But anyway, will any of the developments of Gen V Season 2 beyond Moreau come into play with The Boys Season 5? Hard to tell. As the 8 episodes progressed, I thought that perhaps there would be a number of elements that would jump to Season 5. I was like, oh man, this is going to be huge. But then oddly, by the end of Season 2, they tied up a lot of those elements. And I was like, oh, I guess that element isn't making the jump to Season 5, which was weird. I think, they almost hedged their bets a little bit, being like, well, we can't take it to Season 5, so we might as well tie it up here. You're like, well, why not leave it for a potential Season 3? It was a little weird how some things got neatly resolved within just one season. I didn't love that. And that leads me to my most damning criticism of Gen V Season 2. And that's that if you're a fan of The Boys, you don't need to watch this season. You don't need to. I'm sure The Boys Season 5 will catch you up just fine. I mean, as a week to week, it's very weak. It's really lacking. I'm not going to cover it week to week. I don't think there's enough there. I do think there's enough there to do a spoiler review when it wraps on October 22nd, but it's just not as strong enough. It should have, the way this show is constructed. I mean, I felt that way about The Boys, so I don't know, maybe it'll end up having a weekly audience, but for me, I think it's a binge. And on that note, I would recommend that you wait to binge yourself. I was able to binge it as a critic. I watched it in like 2 days, actually, and it was tough at points. Like, it's wildly uneven until the last 3. I'd say the 3 episodes are definitely the strongest, which is weird because that's how they've set Peacemaker up too, right? And Wednesday, which just came out, only got strong towards the end. I think it's going to be hard week to week, and I wouldn't be surprised if you ended up dropping it and then circling back when you could come back and binge it. There are some interesting twists and really great elements and surprises this season, but there's also a ton of filler. And then I think the biggest issue is that there's a lot about this season that it's not going to gel with the people who like superhero content. I was going to say it in a moment, but I'll just say it now. It's The Boys' version of the Marvels a lot of the time. And I think that I'm surprised that they made that mistake. I mean, what about all the cameos from The Boys, right? We were promised a bunch of cameos this season. And I have to say, particularly towards the end, they do deliver on that promise, but the cameos are quick. There's 2 extended cameos from The Boys. I was delighted at the characters they chose, and so I'll leave that to you to discover. I thought that was interesting. But neither of the big stars of The Boys ever shows up. And I thought that was very disappointing. And I'm surprised that they did that. I mean, I think a lot of people will be waiting for that, which is why I'm telling you, because I think it hurts the show if you think they're going to show up and then they don't. But again, as I said, this is The Boys' version of the Marvels. The Marvels, while you're still reeling from that comparison, how did it happen here? Why do people not learn? Why do franchises not learn from other franchises' mistakes? Although it takes a very long time to make content, so it's harder to pivot than you might think, but it's not that hard. Anyway, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of my reviews or other movie and TV coverage, where I never sugarcoat my opinion. And hey, why not hit that like button as well? I sure would appreciate it. And speaking of not sugarcoating my opinion, I thought The Marvels wasn't horrible, Like, I didn't think it was theater worthy, and I didn't think it certainly wasn't worthy of taking up a spot on Kevin Feige's ridiculously overcrowded dance card. But I didn't think it was nearly as bad as everyone said, and I thought it had its charms. It is very, very sad that Chance Perdomo was killed in a tragic motorcycle accident on his way to start filming Gen V Season 2 last year, and that caused a slight delay as they reworked this season. And out of respect for him, they did not recast the role, a decision I think we can all agree with. And I think it's really nice how this season still remembers his character Andre and manages to make him a meaningful part of this season, even though the character also, has died. Very, very sad. And it's a very nice tribute. But even though we don't want to replace Andre the character, I do think it was a mistake not to bring in a whole new male character to make sure that the cast stays balanced. Because now it's almost an entirely female show. Whereas last season, it did feel like it had more of a balance. Because you've got Marie, Emma, Jordan, who I'd say spends 3/4 of their time in their female form, and Kate. And then they do add a couple of new younger characters to join this group as the season progresses, but they're all female characters. Well, I'll list some male characters in a moment, but 90% of the new members to the group are women. And that's fine. You know, I appreciate a good girl group too, but they just don't perform as well with the audience. You know, I wish they were better done. I mean, we still haven't seen it. This is the best all-girl group I think I've seen. But it's frustrating because you know it's going to limit the appeal of the show. There's Sam. Sam is back, but he's really out of it all season, thanks to Kate making his emotions go away. And even after that starts to wear off a little bit, he's still kind of out of it. Andre's father steps up, played by Sean Patrick Thomas, taking on a larger role to investigate his son's death. And they also add new student Stephen Kalin, who has so much potential on a show like this. I'm surprised how little he's used. He's a missed opportunity. But again, for the vast majority of the scenes on this season, it's all women. And, you know, I worry about what that's going to mean for the appeal of the show. Except it does have a male villain, and Gen V Season 2 has an incredible villain. Hamish Linklater is holding together this entire show in a sea of younger, inexperienced actors. He is so good. And I've been a fan of his since The New Adventures of Old Christine. He can be just so funny, but he can also be very dramatic. It's been so rewarding as a fan of his for so long to see his career level up over the past few years. From Midnight Mass to the new voice of Batman over on Prime Video. I liked that show, and I think that Linklater makes for a really great Batman. He also makes for a great villain here. And he, along with Jaz Sinclair, are the real reasons to tune in this season. Linklater is not only deliciously evil, but extremely smart. A breath of fresh air in a season that unfortunately goes more dumb and crass than The Boys ever has before. I think they kind of jumped the shark in that regard. I think the worst thing is that a lot of the times it just wasn't funny. So he is just, he just is like a beacon of hope. You're like, and they're like, oh, but he's so good. I'll keep watching. His cipher truly is a big secret, one that kept me guessing until the beginning of the episode where it was revealed. I guessed it at the top of the episode, and then at the end of the episode, they revealed it. But it was such a good surprise. I would say that the cipher twist is up there with like the Kaiser Soze twist of The Usual Suspects. And I'm curious to see if any of you guessed it earlier than I did. Some of you are pretty darn good at guessing. Don't ruin it though for anybody. Try to be really careful about spoilers. I hope it doesn't get out. You know, if you're at all a fan of comic book stories, I think season 2 of Gen V is worth it just to experience the Cipher story. It's really, really good. And then, of course, also to witness the rise of Marie Moreau. Jaz Sinclair from The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, just like Chance Perdomo, by the way. And it's so, just like with Hamish Linklater, it's so interesting to see an actor who started out as a supporting really graduate to the lead in a really exciting way. She was great in season 1, and she's even better here in season 2. By the way, shout out to the hair and makeup team, because with all these new episodes, you'd swear that Marie has a second superpower, and that's to always look amazing. She has such amazing hairstyles and outfits every single time you see her. It's really nice, not only for the character, but for Hollywood in general, because it's rare to see Black female characters get to serve like this in not only looking fabulous, but in such an authentic way. Really, she looks phenomenal. Marie is indeed, with her main power, a very powerful soup. And this season, she and us find out just how powerful she can be. I even kind of think they jumped the shark a little bit with her powers. I'm like, I don't understand how manipulating blood would lead to that. But it's still very, very cool. I really like her a lot. Jordan Lee continues to be a very interesting character as well, and this show takes real care in exploring the psychological and emotional components of switching back and forth between genders. And also kudos to London Thor and Derek Liu for continuing to make us believe that they're the same person. And Jordan's very powerful in both of their forms, making them a very formidable fighter as they switch back and forth sometimes in a fight. That's very, very interesting. And well, it's not only visually interesting, but it makes for interesting strategy during the fight. It's also great to see Maddie Phillips' Kate Dunlap step up here as well. You would think that she would just become a cliche villain this season, but they really have an interesting story in mind for her. She also looks amazing as well. Fantastic styling. Lizzie Broadway's Emma is very similar to Paul Rudd's Ant-Man, both in terms of their power sets and being the comedic relief and kind of wearing a little bit thin. And by the way, I really wish that she would get a grip on her powers already. I mean, I guess they're expensive to do, but it's frustrating that we're now 2 seasons in and she can still barely use them. Also, Ethan Slater is in the cast this season. I'm not going to say anything about his role, but all I will say is that by the end of the season, you can kind of have a better understanding as to why Ariana Grande would be into him, because up until now, it's been a total mystery. So yeah, I ended up enjoying Gen V Season 2 in the end, but it was rough at first. They're going to drop the first 3 episodes on Thursday, and I watched the first 3 episodes when I started my screeners. That's what I watched the first night, and I was like, ooh, it was hard. I had to force myself because I knew this review embargo was coming up to go back to the show. But I'm glad I did. You know how good the rest of the episodes were? I was only going to watch 2 episodes after the 3. I was going to do 3, 2, 3 because there's 8 episodes in total. But after I watched the 2, I was like, I want to keep going. And I actually sat and I watched all 5 remaining episodes in one sitting. And that was a good experience. So that's why I'm so strongly recommending the Binge to you. Even if you get a couple of things ruined for you, I still think it's a better binge. I really do think that The Marvels and Birds of Prey is an excellent comparison. Birds of Prey really frustrated a lot of us because we know those characters and love them so well, and they were, they were not faithful to why those characters are successful. But with The Marvels and here, it didn't bother me because it's not based on anything that I have a prior relationship with, let's say. Although some of you didn't really know the Birds of Prey characters and you loved that. And some of you really love The Marvels and you think it's perfect. And if you're in that camp, then I think maybe you should watch this week to week. Maybe you'll really enjoy it all the way through. But yeah, I mean, there are really great elements here. So I don't think you should skip it, but I do think, even though you could, but I do think you should binge it. Again, I mean, maybe you might watch the first 3 and be like, I gotta watch it. I love The Boys. And then you'll be like, whoo. And I'm telling you, don't abandon the show. It's, you know what? Speaking of comparisons, it's very similar to Wednesday Season 2, right? The first 4 episodes, weak. The second 4 episodes, amazing. Imagine if you'd missed those back 4 episodes. And if you did, go back and watch them. They're really good. So that's my non-spoiler review of Gen V Season 2. Again, starting this Thursday with those first 3 episodes. Get them out of the way or wait to binge. And then it concludes on October 22nd, and I'll be doing a spoiler review so we can discuss the season's developments. Share those thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.